for the uptake of climate technologies, but approaches and processes that take into the account the needs, priorities, knowledge, and capacity of all technology stakeholders. So that being like I think the main point here on enhancing enabling environments and capacities. That recommendation pertains to the importance of the enabling environments regarding the uptake of technologies through markets, so market creation, market expansion of or for prioritized technologies, and also not only having those legal and regulatory environments in place, but also having the capacities that technology stakeholders actually need to benefit from those environments. Then thirdly, demonstrating success for replication and upscaling. As you will have seen, the focus is here on creating success stories, so that demonstrate economic, social, environmental benefits in the context of NDC implementation, but then really with a view to leveraging a broader support for replication and upscaling, and that support perhaps not only being of financial nature, but also of institutional or social nature. And then fourth, documenting and disseminating information systematically, and really not only documenting, but then also disseminating those challenges, lessons learned, but also good practices to inform future policy making, and perhaps also avoid certain challenges or mistakes for that matter. The fifth, including more information on technology and NDCs, that one aiming at really encouraging parties to think about how that could potentially be helpful in the NDC process, to facilitate a clear understanding of the party's own policy targets, but also to really provide a basis for facilitating international cooperation, or perhaps more targeted provision of support, for example, by the TEC and CTCN. So that is coming from that angle. And then lastly, making more use of the technology mechanism. So really like basically a reminder to parties that there is a great body of work available from the TEC, for example, in terms of technical documents on various aspects of various technologies, as well as on the implementation side from the CTCN and its services, as also was previously presented. Yeah, so that is in a nutshell what these two documents contain, and I'm of course available and happy for any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much for that presentation, Moritz, and thank you to the task force, which has been very active throughout this process of finalizing this report and the joint recommendations. So thank you to all colleagues for that. And we would now like to open the floor to TEC and CTCN AB members for comments on the final joint publication and the key messages and recommendations. So please raise your hand or indicate in the chat if you have any comments. Let me see now. I see a raised hand from Stig. You have the floor.
Thank you, Moa, and thank you also to the task force that has been working on this very interesting report. I have some questions and maybe some comments, but that doesn't mean that I disagree with the report, but just that I have, there's something that I'm not sure I understand fully. And the first question is that my understanding is that information on NDCs are supposed to be in the ICTU and not the NDC itself. But in this document, we are recommending that we include information in the NDC. Are we then really talking about that we want them to be included in the ICTU, or are we saying that it should be in the NDC? That's my first question. And my second question or observation is that we seem to be inconsistent with the CMA1 decision on the Katowice rulebook when we give new guidance on NDC to parties. Does that mean that we recommend that the CMA amend or change the Katowice rulebook? So those were my two comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Stig. And if I may just follow up on your last point there, if you could clarify which guidance you were referring to. Thank you.
This is the NDC guidance provided by CMA in it's in Katowice. I think it's CMA1. I'm not sure the exact number of it. It's called the Katowice rulebook, and it's also the NDC guidance that was decided in Katowice.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. And let's collect some more questions and comments. So I see raised hand from Ken Wada and then from Spencer. So Ken, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mar. First of all, I would like to congratulate the first outcome, the TEC and CTCN collaboration, and look forward to continuous collaboration with the future. I have linked this publication with great interest and found that publication is very useful, particularly section 5, which includes the success story of CTCN technical assistance projects in Uganda, India, Chile, Cambodia, and Nauru. I hope CTCN can create many such projects in the future. So my question is, what was the key factor specifically for successful implementation of this project? And what do you think developing parties need to consider when requesting technical assistance to CTCN in order to make their NDC-related project successful? That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Ken. And we will take a few more comments. So Spencer, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mo, and good day to everyone. And let me again thank this work. This work, I think, has been good work, and I endorse many of the things. I just have maybe 3 small clarifications on the document. And I agree with the observation section. I think that was a very good addition by the team. The first point I want to make is that it speaks to some clarification on the use and what we mean by priority technologies and prioritization of technologies. I think we need to clarify that a little bit better. In some places, we talk about environmentally sound technologies and so on. But then we have the terminology prioritization of technologies and prioritized technologies. So maybe we could get a little bit more elucidation on this. And then a formulation which I'm not so sure about. It says in the report, you want to ensure a more sociable, equitable distribution of risk. It says distribution of benefits and risk, but I'm not quite sure if we really want to if that is what was meant. If you want socially equitable distribution of risk. So I just want to clarify that. And in terms of my final point I think we have to make use of the technology mechanism, yes. But I also felt that the report should also link the technology mechanism with the financial mechanism, because to carry out all of these things requires that linkage. And I thought it was soft on that. So that's my point. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. And I see a few more raised hands, but I suggest at this point that maybe we give the floor to Moritz if you would like to make a few comments or if you can address some of the questions that were raised.
Thank you, Moa, and yeah, thank you for these comments. I guess, you know, as the work has been done under the guidance of the task force, I guess I'd rather like to give the task force members that are also on the call perhaps first the chance to respond if they like, and of course, otherwise I'll also be happy to do as much as I can on that.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. And let's then proceed with some comments. So I see a raised hand from Erwin Rose. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Hello, everyone. It's great to see everyone together again. And I'm very pleased to be back on the CTCN as well as the TEC. So I wanted to comment on document 14.1, the draft annual report of the CTCN. And I don't want to break the flow of the conversation. I think the draft joint publication on TEC and NDC is very good. And I'm interested in the points that have been raised, but I didn't have any further comments on that. So Chair, would you like me to shift a little bit to respond to the draft annual report at this point? Would that be appropriate? Or would you like me to wait till we finish the discussion on the paper?
Yeah, if possible, if we can wait with those comments, that would be great. Thank you so much.
That's fine. Thank you.
So do we I see a raised hand from Moritz.
Yes, no, I mean, if task force members, you know, do not want to respond to these questions at this point, I can start off the discussion perhaps, and then maybe others would like to add. So on Slick's point regarding the ICTU and NDCs, I mean, my understanding is that the idea of this recommendation was really that it was found, or it was seen to have found useful to have NDCs that speak quite specifically to technology and to also not only qualitative but also even quantitative aspects. And there are some revised NDCs that are really quite specific about both the technology needs, but also in terms of intended support to be provided in that area. And I guess that recommendation really came out of that, but recognizing, and of course with full awareness, that is not the mandate of the TEC or the CTCN to suggest any changes to the Katowice rulebook in a matter of ICTU. So I think it was really more like from coming from a practical aspect. So to answer the question, it would be in the NDC and not in the ICTU. Then on the point on the let me see, on the yeah, I think one was not really on the publication, but let's say on Spencer's point regarding the prioritized technologies. So I think that one was felt as a Greek language, and if it's not, I think there's definitely room for talking about that, or maybe defining it more. What is meant by that? It is, I think, mentioned in the context of processes that have proceeded before selecting a specific technology, and then let's say prioritization in terms of the broad range of different technologies available or potentially to use. Then on the risk, yeah, I think the idea here was really more from a side of, I mean, equitable in the sense that, you know, risk is not only perhaps by, or not more with the end user, or let's say in some cases or approaches for the uptake of technologies with local communities, than it would be like with other stakeholders. So I guess that idea of, you know, balancing out the risk among different stakeholders, also to make some of the approaches more feasible. And then yeah, the link with the financial mechanism. Yeah, I don't think that was really part of this work or the discussion. So there wasn't any discussion around that. It was felt that there is a lot that the technology mechanism can offer, both on the policy and the implementation side, through the existing work of the CTCN on the implementation side also, and that should also be yeah, more utilized, or that there's still potential to utilize that perhaps more. So hence that was the yeah, I guess the genesis of that recommendation. And then regarding those key obstacles, I think that was really from Ken. I think that question was really pertaining to the technical assistance and the obstacles or the challenges that developing countries have in making use of that. So I mean, that I would, it wasn't really part of that focus, wasn't part of that work, of this report. And I definitely think that colleagues from the CTCN Secretariat would be in a much better position to respond to that.
Thank you very much for that, Moritz. That was very helpful. And I now see a raised hand from Anne Barr. Please, Anne, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mrs. Chair, and good day to everybody. Very good to be on this meeting and to see you all. I would like to just mention that I was very happy to be able to be part of the task force for this publication as member of the CTCN Advisory Board. And that gave me the opportunity to bring in one case studies that was selected among the long list. It's a case study on India on water technologies. And I was very happy to see that this specific case study was chosen by the Vice Chair of the CTCN Advisory Board to be presented during the technical meeting of the CTCN as one very good example of how the CTCN work could envision a more transformative approach to its work. So I think that this publication, regardless of whether it should be regarded as a complementary work to the Paris Rulebook, and certainly doesn't interfere with the Paris Rulebook, is a very good opportunity for us as members of this board and this body to reflect on the different aspects and dimensions of technology transfer and development, and specifically the key aspects that influence appropriation and adoption of technologies, and the co-benefits that can bring technology transfer and development, additionally, of course, to climate adaptation or climate mitigation benefits, and also look at the potential risks that some of those technologies might have on vulnerable populations and groups that are not always consulted. So I found it a very useful exercise, and I'm very thankful that I was able to be part of this task force. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Anne, and thank you indeed for taking part in the work of the task force. And with that, I see raised hand from Stig and then Mori. So Stig, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Moa, and thank you for letting me have the floor again. And also thank you to Moritz, who explained that we, in fact, are recommending to amend existing CMA decision. When it comes to amending existing CMA decisions, for those of us who were present in Katowice, we know how extremely difficult and sensitive the consensus were and the language made in the Katowice rulebook. And my view is that it's not very wise of us to suggest amending such a delicate compromise. Even though we may have good reasons for that, it's not a good idea. That's my first point. My second point is that I think the TEC and the CTCN Advisory Board should stick with our mandates and not go beyond the mandates. And if we do, I am a bit worried that the CMA would just discard the whole recommendation section, saying that we are going beyond the mandate. So we should then carefully go through the text and remove any additions or suggestions or recommendation amendments that we want to amend the Katowice rulebook. And by that, I mean we should, for now, I would like to delete section para 14E. I would like to delete in para 133, sentence 3, when it says in NDCs with specific time-bound technology targets in NDCs. We can stick with specific time-bound technology targets, but I want to delete the words in NDCs. And in para 138, I would like to delete section E. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And Maury, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and hello, everyone. I would like to clarify in the recommendations, particularly for the para 137A. It suggests the catalyze the development and the use of action-oriented technology roadmap. I think I can understand the wording, but it is not clear what kind of specific action TEC and CTCN is, requested. I mean, to develop, for example, to develop the technology roadmap, it is rather difficult task for example, the developing countries. And I think it is a lot of tasks is necessary to, implement, to carry out technology roadmap. So I think how the TEC and CTCN will help them to make it, and how far the TEC and CTCN has capacities and knowledge to help them. Specifically, I think maybe TEC and CTCN will help to enhance the knowledge sharing on the how to develop the this kind of roadmap and how to utilize, or to prepare a kind of guidance to develop the roadmap and utilize it, or what kind of technical assistance could be carried out. So I'd like to have some clear idea of what kind of actions are necessary for TEC and CTCN related to this recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Maury. And at this point, I don't see any other raised hands. Oh, sorry. Mehdi, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Moa, and thank you very much, colleagues, for the contributions that we are getting. And also thank you very much, Anne. Really, I liked the water technology, the Mungaru. I would encourage everybody to have a look at it and see the potential it has. Very, very useful. for the developing countries that have to deal with floods and droughts. And thank you, Stig. You are always very constructive, really. I think your points are good, and we should take them into consideration, but kindly also, yeah, you've always been very constructive. You could also suggest not only the task force, this is a joint work for the TEC and the CTCN, and the task force is only spearheading. We could also suggest how to add value to this, because what we should be thinking about more is how this joint work of the TEC and CTCN can be better, and how it can assist with the bigger picture of assisting the developing countries more and more moving forward. Because now NDCs are here to stay with us, and to be improved and to be implemented. And there's no time developing countries will need this help more. If we start it earlier and carry it forward, and make sure that it will be for the assistance of these countries to implement, we'll be doing a lot of good. And so all that said and done, the bigger picture remains, and I also found this work very useful. I thought what we have is more than enough. When I was looking at the joint publication again, maybe I narrowed down too much on this Indian technology, and thought that if we could be picking one technology at a time to see how best these technologies, we could make countries aware. There are many countries that need them, but they are not aware. But if they take time and they are made aware of them, they would pick them up, and this would save a lot, even in terms of resources, because it is already proven and could be customized elsewhere. So as we improve and as we constructively give in our contributions to make the joint publication have a better value, we should not forget that the bigger picture is to assist these developing countries with that. And that could also be a game changer in how we carry out our joint activity in the future, because now we've entered a new era where we will be with the NDCs, and technology will play a major role. Please bear that in mind. In the meantime, we appreciate the fact that I can see us ending up with a good enough publication, but how to cascade that down and make our respective countries make use of it should also be food for thought. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that, Omedi. And now I see a raised hand from Erwin, and then from an observer. So please, Erwin, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. And it's the nature of these meetings that we focus on the elements of a paper that we disagree with or might want to change. So I just want to start by saying I think this is a really excellent paper, and I applaud the work of the consultant and the task force and the Secretariat and everyone involved. And I think this really demonstrates the potential that we have when the TEC and CTCN worked together. And I think it's obviously following the technology framework and the existing work plans. But I think this type of work in support of NDC implementation is really exactly what the TEC and CTCN should be doing to maximize our impact within the UNFCCC and Paris process. So that said, I do, without emphasizing all the positive aspects of the paper, I do want to voice my support for Stig's points about aspects of the text that exceed the mandate of the TEC and CTCN under COP and CMA decisions. And in particular, I want to point to one of the paragraphs that Stig asked to delete in the recommendations, which is that's section 8 recommendations, paragraph 138E. That's page 27 of the document. So the point is of the paper as drafted is well taken, and we would probably tend to all agree. But I think Stig is making a legitimate point about our proper role and our proper mandate. And I just want to make clear why I agree with Stig on that point, but also suggest maybe there's a way to still capture the intent. The title of the paper is properly titled "In Support of NDC Implementation," and so that is our proper role. And so I think the problem that Stig is pointing out here in this subparagraph E is the suggestion is that parties could include more detailed information on technology in the NDC itself. Now, as individuals, we would probably all agree that that makes sense and that would be a good thing. But as a body operating under a certain mandate, that is now getting into advising parties on how they formulate their NDC rather than on how they implement their NDC. So unfortunately, I think we do need to delete that text. It does then end with talking about to enable a more targeted provision of support by the TEC and the CTCN according to their respective functions and other support providers, which I think is also a really important point. So I just want to voice my support for deleting it as phrased, but I want to suggest that there might be a way to still rephrase that subparagraph to sort of capture the idea, but find a way to stay within our mandate to support implementation rather than the formulation of the NDC itself. So I don't have an alternative text right now, but I just want to throw that out to see if anybody wants to try to salvage some aspect of the substance of that point by rephrasing it. And if we do delete the whole paragraph, I'd want to go back and make sure that we're adequately capturing the end of that subparagraph, the idea that we're trying to support ways in which the TEC and CTCN can function more effectively in their role in that regard. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Ping, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like also to add something to the point just made by Stig and also by Irving regarding the paragraph suggested by Stig to delete. I think the argument is we do not want to make change to the agreed the Paris rulebook, and I think that's not the plan when we are doing this together in drafting this this joint publication. I feel lucky because I was part of the task force and had some discussion with colleagues around how to formulate this report. And as mentioned by Rose, I do think we have value in this paragraph, in these recommendations. First of all, I would want to re-emphasize the intention never to make any change to the rulebook of the Paris Agreement. And secondly, I think the formulation of the NDCs and the implementation of the NDCs can not be separate. Like we have NDC process, we will have party members to update their NDCs for every few years, and with more information provided in the NDC will better enable the implementation. So I do not see the contradiction of a better preparation of the NDC with the implementation of NDCs. And also, since the preparation of NDCs is a process determined by each party according to the the decisions in the Paris rulebook. So probably we can have certain twists in this paragraph to reflect the intention is never to make change to the agreed rulebook. In the same time, we keep the essence. When party are preparing NDCs, you can voluntarily to include more detailed information on technology in terms of the needs and support. I think that's what I want to see here. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much for that, Ping. And at this point, I don't see any more raised hands, but we do have a raised hand from an observer, and that is Mr. Tony Simmons from ICRAF. So please introduce yourself, and you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Moa, and thank you, Marit, and the authors to this report. My name is Tony Simons. I'm the Director General of ICRAF, one of the 14 consortium partners to CTCN since its formation. Congratulations on the report. Very nice reading, very thorough, comprehensive, and building perhaps on what Erwin was trying to get to about coaching countries and helping them with their NDCs. Whilst not writing them for them, we do help countries in advising, and I would have two suggestions for the report, two additions. The first one would be on systemic approaches. There's a lot of talk at the moment in interactions between the different conventions, between donor priorities, developing countries and developed countries around systemic approaches. Not systematic, but systemic, using the 8 elements of all systems in the world: inputs, outputs, processes, controls, feedback, external effects, boundaries, and interfaces. And so when you read the report, there's information systems and government systems and rural systems and water systems and heat recovery systems, but there's nothing about knowledge systems. And I think it would be, just to include a paragraph around knowledge systems and their interaction with capacity development systems and tech transfer systems and scaling systems and monitoring systems, particularly impact monitoring systems. So that language can be brought into those public and private sector supporters, investors, actors there. So a graphic linking those various systems, the knowledge, capacity, technology, scaling, monitoring, could very easily be included, and I'm happy to suggest one rather than putting more work to the team. The second suggestion for your report would be around theories of change. There's no mention of theory and change in there, so both the NDCs from countries and the report come across perhaps as a bit passive. So narrating intention, but not being intentional, not kind of overly demonstrating impact orientation. And I think that this might help raise more money for, or more support, more means of finance to do that. And we know that there are 3 theories of change. There's the theory of observed change. This is where you're trying to understand the world. This is where you're trying to build up a knowledge base, the research that's gone behind a lot of these technologies. And that's not really the mandate of CTCN, maybe 5 or 10%, but it's not really there. The second theory of change is the theory of induced change. That is where you're taking investments and actions and interventions to go towards that impact along those impact pathways. And the last one, the theory of contextual change, that everything doesn't work everywhere the same, and how the nuance of place and actors at those locations. So those would be my 2 suggestions to the authors to be a little bit more deliberate on systemic approaches and theories of change. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that intervention, Tony. And I don't see any more raised hands at this point. So I can say thank you to all colleagues for your very constructive comments regarding this joint report and key messages and recommendations. And what we suggest at this point, sorry, now I see a raised hand from Anbar. Anne, please, you have the floor.
Yes, Mrs. Chair, I'm really sorry to interrupt you, but I've just seen that there seems to be another observer trying to raise her hand. Stire, or is it Kathy Lee from Observers? So I don't know if you have time for that, but since you gave the floor to Observers, I was wondering whether there is an opportunity. Thank you.
Okay, yes, sure. Thank you for reminding this. And Kathy from WGC, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Moa. Am I audible? Great.
Yes, we can hear you loud and
Thanks. I'm Kathy, representing WGC, the Women and Gender constituency at TEC 23 and AB 18, taking the floor as both WGC and Youngle. So briefly on the previous agenda items, thanks to Stephen for the presentation of the fruitful TEC meeting last week. Also very pleased to hear Moa's presentation, especially on CTCN's collaboration with Youngle and WGC, including our 2 consultants and the Gender Just Climate Solutions Awards. And specifically on NDCs, thanks Moritz for the fruitful presentation and also the publication. We support STIC's intervention and also glad to see that fostering inclusive, participatory and equitable processes and approaches have been highlighted as a key recommendation. And on Anne's point, I am quite jealous that how much AB members in the joint task force can contribute towards the publication, and very pleased to see that a case study with a strong gender consideration. Also would love to see further case studies, especially with youth and Indigenous peoples focus. Thank you.
thank you very much for that. And yes, now I think we don't have any more raised hands. So at this point, colleagues, thank you again for all your constructive input. Now there is a raised hand from Erwin, please.
Thank you, Chair. I apologize. I thought I had raised my hand before. And I also apologize. I have one other point that I do want to raise, and it's references to the terms, there's references to fostering co-ownership, and that appears in 4.1b in the key messages, paragraph 2A. We are discussing that document as well, right? 4.1 A and B at the same time. Yes. So in the key messages, 4.1B, paragraph 2A, it says fostering inclusive, participatory, and equitable processes and approaches, et cetera, and foster co-ownership. Generate, the full phrase there is generate awareness of technology benefits and foster co-ownership. And that comes out of references in the 4.1A document. In the recommendations in 4.1A, that's section 7, paragraph 138A on page 26. It says generate awareness of technology benefits and result in the co-ownership of these processes and technologies. And then that also comes from an earlier reference in the paper. Sorry. There's one earlier reference in the paper. It's in, I think, paragraph 35B, small I, under technology challenges, section C on page 8. The first paragraph, 35BI, it says, fostering local ownership of the technology solution and approach for its uptake. And I wanted to ask the consultant and try to have a brief conversation about that, because depending on how you read it, this may involve a reference to intellectual property. And if it is, I think that needs to be addressed more clearly in terms of what the intention is. There are obviously significant advantages to local ownership of intellectual property related to technology, and there are many ways that that can be fostered, but I think it's a little bit too simplistic and unclear to me to make a sweeping reference to encouraging local ownership of technology solutions in all cases. There are many situations in which technology can be disseminated and deployed without local ownership of the technology, and there are certain conditions in which the local ownership of technology can occur, but I'm not really comfortable with such vague references. And it might be that I'm totally misreading it, and it means something more like, stakeholder buy-in to it. But if it's specifically a reference to intellectual property, I would like to ask that we have this spelled out more clearly before we include that kind of phrase. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Erwin. And again, thank you everyone for all your constructive input and amendments to this report. And at this point, we would like to suggest that we take on board these comments that have been made, and the Secretariat's, TEC and CTCN Secretariat have noted all the suggestions and suggested amendments that you have made. And the procedure from now that we suggest is that we take these changes on board, and we circulate this first to the task force to finalize this publication. And then we also will circulate to the TEC and AB members a new version by the end of the week. So with this procedure, I would like to see if you agree on the way forward, and please indicate if you have any objections.
No objections to the way forward.
Okay, I see a raised hand from Orly. Please, you have the floor.
Yes, hello. Thank you, Moa. Hello, everyone. Good to be here with you today. I don't have any objections to this. I just didn't get a chance to raise one point earlier as we started the meeting, and I just wanted everybody to be aware of my current position. While we are from Canada, we're very glad to participate in this joint TEC and CTCN meeting and the CTCN advisory meeting. I would like to just ensure everyone is aware that my participation at these meetings is limited at this time due to we currently are in a federal election period in Canada. So that means that we are more limited in our participation. We do not offer views or guidance at this time, but at the same time, we find it's really important to continue participation in these meetings so that we can learn, observe, and understand the discussions so that we can jump right back in once a new government is in place later this month. So I just want to thank everybody for your understanding, and wanted to make sure you are aware that my relative silence is not an indication of disinterest in the issues, and I look forward to the rest of the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that clarification, Orly. And yes, colleagues, so with this suggested procedure, unless there are any objections at this point, we suggest, as I said previously, to take the suggested amendments on board, and first circulate it to the joint task force, and then later on also to TEC and AB. And unless there are any additional comments at this point, again, thank you so much for all your constructive input. And now we would like to suggest to take a 5-minute break. So let's meet here again in 5 minutes, and we will proceed with the meeting. Thank you very much, and see you soon.
So colleagues, welcome back to this joint meeting of the TEC and the CTCN Advisory Board. Let's now continue with our agenda. And the next item on our agenda, continuing with the implementation of joint activities, the joint activities on technology and gender. This is item 9B of the TEC agenda and agenda item 6 of the AB agenda. So I would like to invite the CTCN gender focal point to present a report on the joint activities on technology and gender, please.
Just one moment as I load the presentation. Okay, so I'll be presenting today. My name is Karina Larson. I'm the CTCN Knowledge and Communications Manager and also the gender focal point for the CTCN. I'll be presenting on behalf of the TEC and the CTCN on our collaboration on gender and technology. As you may recall, we have 2 items under this collaboration, which are both listed here. Today, I will be presenting on our work and progress on the area number 2, which is building of a gender experts roster. Here, I would like to present some of the work that we have been collaborating on, and I would also like to acknowledge our youth knowledge exchange specialist, Maria Aguilar Herrera, who our CTCN chair mentioned earlier today, who has helped us with some of the research. So in the period since our last meeting, we have done some extensive desktop research on looking at existing rosters and other types of relevant platforms, and identified over 50 platforms that have various elements of identifying rosters of professionals. And of these, we did a sort of a deeper look into 10 of the most relevant platforms and looked at some of the subcategories. And 6 of these included some reference to climate change topics, maybe not a comprehensive list of topics under climate change, but at least reference them, and female experts in these categories. But none of the rosters that we looked at had a primary focus on climate change issues, technology, or on looking at gender in the context of climate change. And so therefore we feel that there is still a need to develop a gender and climate change roster specifically. And there are many existing initiatives and organizations that could benefit from such a roster in addition to the technology mechanism. And they could also serve to help us promote it to relevant experts. One of the things that we've also done in this period is to really try to get a better sense of what types of experts we're looking for. And we narrowed it to 2 categories. And so the first of these are looking for women experts who are working in various sectors of climate change adaptation and mitigation, who could be enlisted to work on knowledge sharing activities, serve in meetings and panel speakers in order to create a gender balance. The second group that we're interested at looking at specifically is developing a list of individuals who have specific gender expertise within various climate change sectors. So these individuals would be very useful to call upon for guidance in terms of gender mainstreaming of various activities, including technical assistance, knowledge sharing, and capacity building and development. From there, we have started to develop aspects of what the criteria that would be utilized in the roster. Some of these are very straightforward, including the name and gender identification, but also country of residence, languages that the person may speak or write, their country or region, but also the country and region where they have expertise, as well as such things as their academic background, publications, work experience, and affiliations. Then looking in terms of the categories of expertise, we have started to develop a list which in terms of the mitigation and adaptation sectors are very much aligned with the work that the TEC and the CTCN do, looking at the specific sectors like agriculture and energy, but also other sectors such as finance and innovation. In terms of the specific gender expertise, we have started to build a list, but this is not completed yet, but looking at specific aspects such as gender budgeting, gender in specific sectors such as agriculture or transport, where a very specific type of experience would need to be had and would be quite helpful to be applied in much of the work that we're doing. So as we work to develop that criteria and the categories a bit better, we'll want to review and also solicit the input of others, both within the CTCN and the TEC, but also outside and certainly within the women and gender constituency. And we'll want to consider where is the best home for this information, and then to start to develop the actual platform wherever it may be based, as well as the type of template registration form that could be utilized by experts who are interested to put their names forward for consideration, and also sort of a process to review the information and sort of confirm that these should be added. And finally, to work broadly to raise awareness of the roster itself so that we can encourage experts to add their names to the list, but also so that the list will be utilized by those who are working within the technology mechanism and beyond that. So we still have work to do on that, and we'll continue to do this into the last part of this year and going into next year as well. I will stop there, and I'm happy to take any questions or would appreciate any guidance that the members may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karina. And indeed, the floor is open to comments from members of the AB and the TEC. Anne, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for giving me the floor. As a representative of ENGO, I know everybody knows I'm also a member of the Women and Gender constituency, but here I'm really speaking in my role in the CTCN Advisory Board member. I would like to commend the work of the TEC and the CTCN for this joint activity. I think specifically the contribution I was able to make in the joint publication of the TEC and CTCN on technologies in NDCs, showing how policies sometimes do miss out on the gender dimension of a technology transfer with this Indian case studies, really is a good illustration of how essential such a roster of gender experts is. And I'll try to be as short as possible, but to be very clear and to be understood on what I mean here is that this technology in India really targets very poor farmers, and of which most of them are women farmers that are not landowners and have absolutely no capital to invest in such a technology. And the case study shows that it is possible to put in place a specific mechanism and a specific public policy to ensure that these women farmers would have access to the technology. But if you do not have those gender experts that are able to give you the advice within your government or within the CTCN as an advisory body that gives advice to a country on how to implement a specific technology, for example, then you could really miss out on including the most important beneficiaries of such a technology. So again, I think this is a very important work, and I do encourage all the board members to support with contributions on providing names of experts from all countries to be part of that gender roster. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anne. The floor is still open to interventions from members who would like to comment on this work. Karina, perhaps you would like to respond?
Thank you. Indeed, I mean, the intention with this work is really that from the CTCN side, for example, that in conducting technical assistance, we provide guidance to our network members about some of the expectations we have for how guidance will be represented in the work, not only in terms of budget, which we have a mandatory minimum 1% of the budget to be spent on gender activities, but also that we want to track indicators and look at the outcomes and also what is trying to be achieved in the beginning in terms of gender. But we do encounter cases where our network members may not have in-house expertise, and therefore it would be very helpful to them and to the overall process of technical assistance if they could then look to such a roster to identify experts in particular sectors that they may be working in or in specific regions. And so so that's just one example of where we see a potential use of this work. And certainly in speaking with other gender focal points from other institutions such as the GCF or the GEF, everyone is looking for these types of experts for the same reasons, and seeing that there is not one clear place where everyone could go, and a process that would make it very easy to add oneself to this list. We can really see a value in putting this together. So thank you.
Thank you again, Karina. And let me also open the floor to observers to make any comments on this joint activity. Kathy, please.
Thank you very much, Chair, for the floor. I'm Kathy, speaking on behalf of the Women and Gender constituency, and we fully support Anne's point on behalf of Angle, and also many thanks to Karina's presentation as well as Kinga's presentation last week at the TEC. Also, of course, the amazing work by the gender focal points, Karina, Kinga, and Monique, also Andrea from the TEC Secretariat, and Maria, our youth gender consultant. And of course, also thanks for reaching out to us, WGC, for collaboration on the roster, as well as the review of the Gender Action Plan next year. Also looking forward to continuing the collaboration after this meeting, and looking forward also to our joint COP event by the CTCN and WGC on the Gender Just Climate Solutions Awards. And besides the roster, we would also like to offer our support and be included in CTCN's work on raising awareness of countries on gender. And last but not the least, also thanks to TEC's attention on their increasing attention on gender as well. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Kathy. So colleagues, with that, I take it that both the AB and the TEC have taken note of this information on the progress of our work on gender and technology. Thank you again to Karina, and to everybody who's contributed to this work, and thanks again. So let's then move on with our agenda. Let me just double check there are no other interventions. Yes, so let's move on to the joint annual report of the TEC and the CTCN, and specifically the joint chapter of the joint annual report. This is item 8A in the TEC agenda, in TEC document, meeting document number 15, item 6 in the CTCN AB agenda. And as in the past, in accordance with the agreed procedures for preparing the joint annual report, the report contains a joint chapter of the two bodies. The procedures note that the chairs and the vice chairs of the TEC and the CTCN AB are to prepare and finalize this joint chapter, taking into account any comments received from the members of the TEC and the AB. So the draft joint chapter has indeed been prepared, and it includes information on, amongst other things, outcomes of the joint activities of the TEC and the CTCN, as we've just been hearing, also challenges and lessons learned in implementing the technology framework as invited by the CMA. So the TEC and AB members are very much invited to provide their comments on the draft, and in accordance with past practice, the chairs and vice chairs will take comments into account in the finalization of the joint chapter. So colleagues, the floor is open for any comments on the joint chapter. Erwin, please.
Thank you. So I do not have any proposed changes, but I would just like to take this opportunity to reinforce a couple of the elements that I'm most excited about in this text, just to highlight some of the areas that I think we are being most productive in and where I'd like to see us continue our work. So looking at the document, paragraph 6A talks about coordination in public outreach, working with the NDEs, and then 7B talks about the value in strengthening the coherence and enhancing the synergies of the respective work of the two bodies. And then subparagraph C there says, in the future, the TEC and CTCN considered important to continue improving the feedback mechanism between the two bodies. TEC policy work could, among other sources of information, be more systematically grounded on case studies and lessons learned from CTCN's operational activities and vice versa. I'm not looking to change it. I almost think that can be fleshed out more because I think it's so important for us to build on this type of collaboration between the two bodies. And you know, I think that the TEC's impact isolated from the CTCN is very limited. There are a lot of bodies providing the type of broad policy discussions, information and guidance that the TEC does. And I think the TEC is strongest when it links its work to the CTCN and vice versa, as mentioned in this paragraph. You know, the real niche and special status and potential for value added in both bodies is their status as UNFCCC constituted bodies. And the concept of having the TEC as a policy arm of the UNFCCC and the CTCN as the implementing arm on technology, you know, is a good idea. And when the two verge off in separate paths, I think each is less effective. And I think the more that the TEC focuses its work on ways that it can inform CTCN assistance and ways that TEC's work is also informed by CTCN experience is really where the TEC can be most effective. And then on the other hand, similarly, if the CTCN follows the work stream of the TEC, follows the types of programs the TEC is focusing on, follows the type of information and guidance that comes out of the TEC, then it increases its value as a UNFCCC implementing body on technology and will be most effective. And as I mentioned, if the CTCN, as much as possible, given the demand-driven nature of it, ground its projects on lessons learned and recommendations from the TEC, it will be more effective. And the more collaboration is on feedback and the CTCN feeds its experiences back to the TEC, then also both sides benefit. So I just wanted to highlight a couple of the points that I think were most important in this draft joint chapter. And it's possible, if members agree, we might ask the chairs to flesh out the text in that regard. to help emphasize the points we're making, but I'm not insisting or even asking that we specifically edit the chapter. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Erwin, for that input. Colleagues, the floor is still open for any other reflections on this draft joint chapter. Stig, please.
Thank you. I don't have I am fine with everything in the text. I have just a little question, and that's regarding the tech meeting, as you referred to earlier, Stephen, that we were elaborating on the text work on gender, and it's a bit longer than the text in para 5, and I assume that the CTCN will also have a para on gender. And is it possible to say something about the totality of the text in the annual report? So all the 3 sections, how will they look together? Are they corresponding, or would they be?
Sorry, Stig, I've lost you. I don't know if you've been cut off.
I'm not sure. Can you hear me now? No? Okay.
We can hear you. I can hear you.
Oh,
I
you
can hear you
That's
too.
okay.
Okay.
It's Stephen's connection that seems to be.
Perhaps I could ask colleagues, okay, I think it must have been a problem with my internet connection. Stig, I do apologize. I lost you at the point when you were asking whether the paragraph could say something about the totality of the gender work. And then I'm afraid I lost you after that.
No, my question on, but just how because we have section in the tech part of the report on gender, we have this one para in the joint report, and then there will be one, I assume, on the CTCN. Is there, how do they seem together? If you cut them out and paste them one by one, would they show that we have a consistency throughout our work? That was my question. It's just for clarification, and I don't have any objection to the text.
Thank you very much, and apologies again for the technical difficulties on my side. Yes, indeed, I think that's a very helpful reflection that when we do come to finalize this text, and particularly that chapter, that paragraph on gender, we should certainly have regard to how the 2 specific chapters reflect each other to the extent that there's any commonality that we can extract. Are there any other colleagues who wish to comment either on that point or on other points in respect of the joint chapter? Kinga, please.
Thank you, Stefan, and also thank you, Stig, for the comment. For what I know is that we have limitations to how long the text can be, and I was actually, I think this is I also agree with you, Stig, that this para is fine. I think it's a good summary, and because of the limitations for the text length, I would like to ask the Secretariat for clarification if they are available now. Thank you.
Thank you, Kinga. So there is a request for clarification from the Secretariat. I assume, Kinga, the UNFCCC Secretariat you're referring to?
Yes, please.
Thank you. In respect of the length, the word limit of the joint chapter, please. So if the UNFCCC Secretariat is with us, there is a request for clarification about the word limits in the joint chapter in the context of the paragraph on gender, please. I just received a text from the Secretariat saying it seems that they cannot be heard. So there's obviously a few technical difficulties today, but perhaps you could write something brief in the chat on this particular point, please. Stig, are you asking for the floor again? No. Kinga?
Oh, sorry. I decided to type it in the chat as well. It's just some editing clarification from the Secretariat is what I'm asking for. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So as we wait for that, are there any other comments on the joint chapter? See, the comment from the Secretariat is the whole joint annual report has a limit of 10,700 words, about the length of a master's dissertation. That obliges to be mindful of the number of words and keep paragraphs concise. So that's the response, respective word limit. So the floor is still open to members and also observers who wish to comment on the draft joint chapter. And the Secretariat has also written that the editors, while proofreading, will check also consistencies and duplications, indeed, including on the gender sections. Thank you very much, Andrea. So I see there are no additional requests for the floor on the topic of the joint chapter. That being the case, thank you, colleagues, for your inputs. And as in the past, the four chairs and vice chairs will finalize the joint chapter, taking into account the feedback that we've received during this session. So thank you very much for that. So let us then turn to our next agenda item for today, which is item number 7, future joint activities. And here we would like to propose some potential joint activities for the consideration of members of the two bodies. So again, if the Secretariat could kindly share the relevant PowerPoint. Thank you very much. Perhaps we could put it on full screen if we could, just so it's a bit larger. Thank you. So of course, what you see here to begin with are the existing joint activities which have already been agreed, and in the case of technology and NDCs, the work is in the process of wrapping up. In the case of gender and technology, as we've just heard, the work will be continuing. Now, there are a number of potential additional joint activities which have been prompted by the work of the technology mechanism during this year. These include areas highlighted in the findings from the draft technology and NDCs report, as we've just been hearing. The example here is linkages between policy and implementation regarding technology, and also from the TEC's work on endogenous capacities and technologies, needs, gaps, and challenges, which were identified based on feedback from NDEs, inter alia. And the idea here is that this would inform the implementation of the CTCN's work, including the support that it provides. Also, joint analysis for implementation of monitoring and evaluation surveys, M&E being another potential area of joint activity. So this is very much offered by way of brainstorming and to solicit inputs and feedback from the members of the two bodies on potential future joint activities. And with that, I would like to open the floor for members for comments and suggestions on potential future joint activities. Erwin, please.
Thank you. I'm mindful of how much the activities are already structured based on the current work plans and operating plans and budgets. So I'm not going to make any dramatic new proposal, but I'm just going to make the point, building on my comments on the joint chapter, that I think we really should, to maximize the effectiveness of both bodies, I really think we should significantly expand the level of coordination between the two bodies and the linkages between the two bodies sort of at the core of their work. So these are all good projects and good progress, I think, but I would just like to make the point that I'd like to see more overarching, not integration of the bodies themselves, but integration of the work. And I would just put that out as a suggestion and a challenge to all of us if people agree with me that that's a desirable direction to head. I think there's already a lot of communication among the chairs and the secretariats. I think someone, maybe not at this meeting, but I've heard someone suggest that we could use a sort of new overarching task force on coordination between the TEC CTCN. I'm not sure to what extent that already exists, and maybe the chair could clarify that. And I'd also just be interested to know if beyond this, looking more long-term, if there are thoughts about how to further integrate the work of both bodies, coming from the leadership or the secretariat of the two bodies or other members. So I'll be looking for opportunities to encourage that, but I don't have any other more specific proposals for specific activities for the coming year. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Erwin. And just on that point of clarification, the existing joint task force is the one that has been working on the technology and NDC's draft report. So next I have Anne, followed by Ping, please.
Yes, thank you, Stephen. And thank you for presenting these potential areas of work. So if I understand well, you seek our advice or our position on which focus more specifically we should put on. If that is the case, I think since we have worked together, I fully agree with Erwin on the fact that it is important to have the TEC and the CTCN work more together. And I think that this joint work on the publication has been a very concrete way of bringing both bodies to work together, and especially on a topic or an activity that is extremely important for the goal of the Paris Agreement. It is implementation of NDCs. So I think that taking the benefits of the learnings and all the recommendations that have come out of this publication is certainly an area where we could put focus on. And working on endogenous capacities and technologies, that could be a very important focus. as we have seen that the CTCN, at least from what I know of the work of the CTCN, is seeking to have a more transformational work and approach, and that certainly indigenous capacities and technologies are part of that, as they take into account the knowledge of the populations on site, on their ecosystems, and how it is possible to better integrate that into technology development. So if we have to choose, since we don't always have enough time to stir on new areas of work, I think that would be a good choice. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anne. And may I ask people to mute themselves when they're not having the floor? Ping, please, you're very welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephen, our chair. And I just want to remind colleagues about two information. I think the first one is we have the technology framework we agreed in Katowice. Within the technology framework, we agreed many actions or activities to be taken by the technology mechanism. If I remember correctly, still we have some of the activities or actions haven't been implemented yet. So I think when we consider potential work for future joint activity of TEC and CTCN, we might consider those need to be jointly undertaken by TEC and CTCN. And secondly, I remember a year before, the TEC and CTCN, the chairs, together with the secretary of both the CTCN and also the UNFCCC secretary, there was a table list some of the potential joint activities. If I remember correctly, the technology and NDC and gender and technology was the first two agreed by both TEC and CTCN to consider. And within that table, we still have other activities. I think those can also be freshed here to be considered as future potential activities. Thank you.
Thank you, Ping. And next, Stig, please.
Thank you. And I only have I'm very supportive of more joint work and also closer collaboration. My question is more on maybe a bit on what we are talking about here, because we say TEC and the CTCN, but the discussion is more on TEC and the advisory board and not the CTCN itself. But in the past, we had more interaction with the CTCN without the AB like a filter between. So are we talking about more contact also with the CTCN, or are we now exclusively talking about the advisory board? Thank you.
Thank you, Stig, for that intervention. And of course, I stand to be corrected by colleagues, but it seems to me that the work we have been doing under NDCs, but also gender, has involved the AB, certainly, but also the CTCN. Of course, the AB is part of the CTCN, but the CTC has been active on the gender file, as we've seen in the recent presentation. Do other colleagues have any reflections on this point about our collaboration with the CTCN, including the AB? or indeed any general reflections on potential future joint activities? Suil, please.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. I would like to leave 2 points on the potential work. I think that we need to first consider the time limitation until next year. So here there are 3 potential work proposed. So considering the time limitation, I think that for example, the first one will be the best priority because somehow we did joint work and then we'll publish a joint publication, and then we can develop some ideas, findings from that joint work for further future joint work. And second potential work will be also, I mean, there is second priority because actually also the from tech side, the capacity building and the stakeholder engagement is, we are also trying to identify some future works. So I think based on such a thing that I think that the second potential work suggested is also really good. Thank you.
Thanks, Suil. Just a question of clarification. By the second one, do you mean the endogenous topic or?
Yes, endogenous okay. Yeah.
Thanks. I just wanted to be clear on that. Stig, are you asking for the floor? Are there any other colleagues who would like to intervene on potential joint activities? Including our observers? Ahmedi, please.
Thank you very much, and thank you, colleagues, for constructive contributions. I think that I would have liked to hear more from Stig on how best we could carry out the joint activity and how we can make it more inclusive so that it fits the definition it is supposed to serve. But in my view, I also share the view that the advisory board is part of the CTCN. And besides that, it's also my belief that some of this work we are doing should be taken further, including what we have just done. As we said earlier, and I want to agree also with what colleagues have said, NDCs are there to stay, and being brought it out very well that they will be periodically updated and that there may be need to make adjustments on them. But eventually they have also to be implemented. So it's good to give consideration to advancing some of the work that we have already done from where we left them, including what we've done right now with the technology and NDCs. There's something more that could still be done so that this work can be scaled up down there by those who need it. And that would be part of the transformation we're looking for. It may look a small thing, but if you look at it carefully, like the example that was brought on board by Anne, it really, really has potential. And I would advocate for advancing the work, probably by putting it as advancing the technology and NDC work. Of course, with a view to rolling it out at scale. And not only that, we can look at what else we have done before and see what else could be done with what we've done. And of course, look at the list, like Ping said, we had a list of other things, so that when we decide on what to do, it could be something that does not end just with a publication, but could end up on the ground, because we have those themes in the technology framework that we could now also start looking at differently from how we were working before we had it. So I know it's a brainstorming session, but I want to focus a lot more on how can we move ahead and implement and stimulate interest into implementation, or catalyze it, whatever our role is supposed to be, so that we can see this work ending in the ground. And there's real demand for that. So let's think along those lines, colleagues. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mehdi. And next we have Matt, please.
Hello, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well. Just some comments from my side, and just really following up on some of the messaging that Omedi has just made. I think it is important now that we move from planning to implementation. It's a natural step, maybe from the work that has been done on technologies and NDCs, to maybe frame something around how we can achieve transformative impact in terms of delivering on commitments and delivering on the new raised ambition. Now, that could also be framed by, you could focus on maybe some particular types of technologies, such as you could look at nature-based solutions, you could look at circularity of supply chains, or you could look at new business models to enhance that transformation and that change. So there's just some examples, but ultimately I'm just following up on what Omedi has mentioned in terms of the movement now towards more impact. And I think that should be framed as a natural step to build on the technology and NDC work, but also, as the potential work highlighted, the links between policy and implementation, but possibly the next step, how you can actually deliver on identified ambitions and goals, and what type of instruments or mechanisms are required to deliver. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matt. Are there any other colleagues who wish to reflect on this item? Dietram, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Yeah, I also would like to point to that need for transformational change, and maybe also in line of the upcoming stock take. So maybe if we can have, let's say, our joint view from TEC and CTCN on what we can contribute to the existing gap on. We all know that we still have like a massive gap on meeting the goals to the Paris Agreement, and technology plays a key role, and there needs to be an accelerated uptake of the technologies. So what we have at the moment is not sufficient. So maybe we can also, and I think to be more specific and going more into the implementation, we have to be more sector specific and less generalistic, and maybe we can highlight one or two sectors and then condensate the experiences made both from TEC and CTCN, and highlight put all these experiences in perspective to the gaps which are existing and what needs to be done as an input to the stock take also. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Dietram. So as we also have some discussion in the chat. Kathy supports Dietram's point. I see Stig has written the modalities of the CTCN, says the CTCN also through its AB will consult with the TEC in order to provide coherence and synergy. Thank you. Are there other requests for the floor, either from members or observers on this particular topic of potential future joint activities? Okay, well, thank you very much, everybody who has contributed to this discussion. What I would like to suggest in terms of a practical way forward is that, of course, we take note of the comments and also ask the existing joint task force of TEC and AB members to work intersessionally on the suggestions and to propose something more concrete in terms of future joint activities at our next joint session. And of course, the membership of that task force, or I should say membership of the task force, remains open to all interested members. So would that way forward be acceptable to colleagues? Thank you very much, everybody. And we've, of course, made a note of that and all the comments which have been contributed. So that brings us then to agenda item number 8 of today, the closure of the 23rd TEC meeting. We have indeed reached the end of our 23rd TEC meeting, and I think it's fair to say we had a very productive set of sessions last week and also today in our joint session with AB colleagues. Thank you from my side, particularly to all the TEC members who have contributed to this TEC meeting, as well as to the observers, and indeed the Secretariat for supporting all of our efforts. Before closing, I do want to just acknowledge a couple of our TEC members whose terms will be expiring at the end of the year. Mori-san, who is joining us today, but also Robbie as well. So I think I speak for everyone when I say that these two individuals have given extraordinary contributions to the TEC over the years, and I personally have learned a lot from both of them. So thank you very much, Mori-san, but also to our colleague, Robbie, as well. And as we wrap up, I've also been asked on behalf of the Secretariats to apologize for the technical difficulties, particularly the one that resulted in many CTCN observers being signed in under the name of Secretariat. And the Secretariat asked me to note that you will receive an email today with a new link that will allow you to join in your own, with your own identity. So apologies for that. But again, from a TEC perspective, thank you very much, everybody. This concludes our 23rd TEC meeting. I wish all the CTCN AB members a fruitful ongoing meeting, and I look forward to seeing you all very soon. That wraps up the proceedings for today. Thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you,
Thanks
Chair.
to our
Thank you,
colleagues.
everybody. Good day to all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.